Did you know that as long as you are in the United States of America, you are never more than 107 miles away from McDonald's?
How far do you think you are away if you're like in Africa?
Well, that's beyond the point. Let's talk about this for 1 second before we start. Think about that. You're never more than like basically 2 hours away. Like if you're starving, you can get to a McDonald's in 2 hours.
Fatness of America.
And here's the follow-up question. McDonald's has evolved. We went from the Happy Meal to them having salads. The next step is beer. They're having like 24-hour drive-thrus now. They're doing all-day breakfast now. Is beer happening next?
What about a handy? Like a happy ending at McDonald's? They need to get they like the Happy Meals. How about the happy ending? McCann job.
Let's get loaded. Welcome to the Loaded Box Podcast.
Where we never finish first because we finish last.
Oh, from Happy Meals to happy endings, and this is a happy beginning because we are starting another episode 173 of the Loaded Box Podcast. It's week 15 in the NFL. That means it's the second week of your fantasy football playoffs. So we're doing two preview podcasts this week like we've been doing for about the last half of this season. We're going to be talking daily fantasy sports, bargains, stacks, advice. But since it is your standard fantasy football league playoffs, we have gotten a plethora of start or sit questions. So I think we should start with that. And then if you're used to us starting with our daily fantasy sports and that's what you want to hear, go ahead and skip forward. But other than
Don't do that.
Well, don't do that then. Fine. Listen to DJ.
Yeah, don't skip forward. We're funny, we're awesome. Just listen and enjoy.
And DJ gives happy endings. So let's start it off with a listener question, and maybe you can give a happy ending early here. Are you ready, DJ?
Happy ending early. All right.
It's a great beginning. All right, we got Justin Jackson, the new starter basically for the Chargers at least this week versus the Chiefs, or Spencer Ware, who plays for the Chiefs, going against the Chargers. Who you got in this one?
Well, I thought Spencer Ware just looked slow and trashy this last week. Didn't like anything about him. I don't understand how Justin Jackson was not more involved in the offense. And the way he played 2 games ago, because I can't remember who it was, doesn't matter. He played really well. He looked way better than Eckler. Looked like Eckler wasn't a running back on his own. So I'm excited to see now Justin Jackson get the opportunity. I think he's like the leading rusher in Northwestern history, if I remember correctly. I'm excited to see him get the opportunity against not a good defense here in Kansas City. He's going to get the ball thrown to him. He's going to get plenty of handles. I've got to go Justin Jackson here as essentially the sole back. I'm sure there's going to be Deion Williams? No, that's
Damian
the
Williams.
So Damian Williams, but that's the Chief anyway.
Yeah. That's literally what I was going to say as well. I like Justin Jackson here, and you look at these offenses, and they can both score points. They're both going to get a lot of plays, so you get volume regardless. But man, when I was watching that Chiefs game last week, it was Damian Williams everywhere. I was pissed because I have Spencer Ware. But now you look at the Chargers. Gordon's likely going to be out. Eckler's not going to be able to clear concussion protocol in time. That leaves Jackson, and I don't even know who the hell's behind Jackson at that point. So I don't
even know either.
Right. So from a volume perspective, and going against a worse rush defense, clean sweep, going Justin Jackson. Let's move on to
Thomas Jackson.
Woo! Let's go on to the second one here. You got a flex position. Once again, Spencer Ware is in the mix. The other 2 options are Jordan Howard versus the Packers or Mark Ingram versus the Panthers. What do you got?
So, as we just mentioned, I don't really like Ware at all. Like you said, Williams looked better. Ware looked, like I said, slow and shitty. Mark Ingram's always kind of questionable, but even more questionable against a team that is really good at stopping the run, and where it seems like it's going to be more Alvin Kamara usage against defenses with this kind of a front seven. That's how I just feel when the Saints are playing against a defense with a better front seven, is more Kamara, just because of his McCaffrey-like matchup deficiencies he creates. So I'm going to go Jordan Howard, coming off his 100-yard performance on Sunday night there. I think what they're going to do is they're just going to try to not let Trubisky. He looked bad. They're not going to let Trubisky lose the game for them. So they're going to give it to the running back. So whether it's Howard, whether it's Cohen, I'll get into Howard a little bit more as this podcast goes on. But I think Howard's going to see another plethora of carries. The Packers defense hasn't been good against the run at all. Ever since they lost Daniels and Muhammad Wilkerson together, so they're getting thin on the defensive line. Plus, Blake Martinez hasn't been healthy for the last 3 weeks. So, Jordan Howard, I'm favoring in this one.
You know, the one thing that scares me, and I'm between the same two guys, the one thing that scares me about Howard here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 straight games without a single touchdown. That concerns me a little bit. He's only had double-digit fantasy points in one of those games. That was last week, and he barely hit it against the Rams. So, yeah, the yardage, I mean, that's really hardly has been there either. He had the 100-yard game last week. I'm going to go Ingram. He's a little bit more risky because of what you said there with Kamara. That does seem like a Kamara-type game. But, man, I mean, I played Ingram last week, and he did just fine as one of my DFS bargain plays. So
yeah, he was garbage. I told you to play Ingram last week. Now I'm telling you not to play him.
Well, we're going to have to agree to disagree on this one. So, listener, whoever put in this question, go with DJ, with Howard, or go with yours truly as Mark Ingram.
Go with me. I'm usually right.
Yeah, right. All right, let's do a tight end question. You love these.
Fuck tight ends.
Your boy, David Njoku or Kyle Rudolph? Rudolph is facing the Dolphins, and Njoku is facing the Broncos.
So I kind of want to talk. Okay, well, I hate tight ends. There's a lot of things I was going to say about the Dolphins, but I hate tight ends, so I'm just going to say they're both so inconsistent, but I prefer Rudolph, I guess, here. I don't know. Who cares? It's fucking tight end. It's hit or miss at tight end.
I was going to, in my DFS lineup that we're going to talk in a little bit here, I was going to have Rudolph, but I ended up not going that direction. Man, Rudolph is literally the epitome of the tight end position this year. A decent game, like once or twice here and there, like 2 or 3 touchdowns. That's about it. Njoku can have some breakout games. He's a better candidate.
Not really, though.
But he's a better. You'd agree though that he's a better candidate. If one of these guys is going to score 2 touchdowns in the same game, it'd be Njoku. But what I like in this situation, Rudolph going against that Dolphins defense, going against Gronk having his best week of the year, over 100 yards in the touchdown.
And falling on his stupid fucking face.
And then doing that on defense, which was fantastic. Oh, my gosh.
It's not his work. He should have lost 10 fantasy points for that stupid-ass.
He broke down.
I know it wasn't his fault he was on the field, but you can't look like an idiot like that, just stumbling around like a drunk William H. Macy on Shameless.
The robot broke down, like an arm fell off, a leg fell off, and he just stumbled forward, and it was like his battery just ran out on the field.
It was ridiculous.
Loved it. As you can see if you're watching on YouTube, still got the Dolphin shirt on. Hope it's still in my mind, even though it shouldn't be. But yeah, I don't want to talk much more about this one. I'm going to go Kyle Rudolph. All right, here. This is an interesting one.
I hate this question.
Well, too bad. It's very. You should look at this one on the cheat sheet here because
I've already looked at all these.
Okay, well the listeners haven't. So stop interrupting. All right, you can add a wide receiver. You got a lot of options here. You got the person that no one knew until 48 hours ago, Tim Patrick, Curtis Samuel, Deshaun Hamilton, John Ross, Chris Conley, or the Baltimore tandem of Willie Snead and Michael Crabtree. Do you have one or two there that you wouldn't mind considering adding on the waivers this week?
Well, I'm never adding something called a Tim Patrick because I don't need my accountant playing football.
Especially wide receiver. Like, if Tim Patrick were to play offensive line, I would be okay with it. But Tim Patrick at wide receiver, I'm out.
Exactly.
A punter,
long
maybe?
Snapper. If he was a long snapper, I'd be like, cool. That's Tim Patrick.
Yep.
It seems legit, but no. But if I have to choose a couple here, I'm looking at John Ross here just because we got no AJ Green in that offense. He's had some solid games he's put together, and they kind of, I don't know. It's just him and Tyler Boyd now, right? So I'm looking at John Ross as one of the 2 options there. And then, I don't know. I really don't know where it's coming down to. I don't like Curtis Samuel. I'm just not a fan of Curtis Samuel. I don't think I ever will be. I can't select a Raven. I don't even know who's going to play quarterback for them. So I guess I'm going to have to go to Deshaun Hamilton, who is probably the best matchup, most opportunistic guy now going forward. I know Sutton had a foot injury or ankle injury in the last game. He'll probably be back for this next game, but Deshaun's going to have some matchups, and he looked like a solid wide receiver. So I guess that's the guy I'm going to roll with here.
I think my number one.
The 2.
Year two. Well, my number one, I think, is a guy you didn't talk about. It'd be Chris Conley, and I think it's because one, he's familiar with that system. He's been there for a little while now. Two, man, it's opportunity. I mean, that offense is always on the field. It seems like they're always scoring points, and it's likely without Sammy Watkins. And who knows what's going on right now with Tyreek Hill and his injury. So I just think sheer volume alone, I like Chris Conley. It's a tougher matchup, but I mean, Kansas City's sort of creeping into that matchup-proof kind of team. I mean, they played Baltimore last week. Did you see the no-look pass by Mahomes?
Yeah.
I feel like everyone saw that a million times now. That's sweet from the different angles. I loved that. So I'm going to go Conley 1, and then actually I'm stuck at number 2 between Willie Snead and Michael Crabtree. I don't like either of them. That's a terrible situation, but they play the Bucs. So I feel like one of those guys might go off. I just feel maybe it'd be Crabtree over Snead. I don't know. That's
Nobody
such a
goes
tough
off
call.
in the Ravens offense at wide receiver position.
I can't disagree with that. So, all right, your number 1 and 2 are, what'd you say, John Ross and Hamilton?
And Hamilton.
Well, we're going to really screw this guy over because I'm going to go Conley and Crabtree. So, best of luck. Next.
Good luck.
Oh, pick a defense here. Lots of options. You got Baltimore versus Tampa, Buffalo versus Detroit, Denver versus Cleveland, Washington at Jacksonville, or Atlanta at Arizona.
This is a good one. Well, I'm immediately eliminating Denver versus Cleveland. Immediately.
Yep, I'm with you.
That one I'm knocking off. Process of elimination wise, my gut tells me to go Baltimore.
Me too.
Just because this seems like the type of matchup that Jameis is just gonna fucking look like a big dumb idiot.
4 picks.
Remember Russell Wilson's interception last night? Jameis Winston is gonna do that like 4, 5, 6 different times. That Russell Wilson interception at the end of the first half was the stupidest interception I've ever seen in my life. Which gets me so angry about him because I'm like, God, this guy sucks, and then he does good things, and then he does that, and I'm like, he sucks again. But, yeah, I think Jameis Winston is going to do a lot of that against that Baltimore defense with their pressure. And, yeah, it could get ugly. It could get ugly fast for Jameis.
Yeah, I'm kind of between Baltimore and Buffalo in this one just because Detroit's so depleted right now. But, man, you would just look at those quarterbacks. Who's more likely to go off, Stafford or Winston? And somehow I think Stafford is still probably the answer there. Like you said, Winston is more than due for just a terrible game. I'm going to go Baltimore. Let's make it a sweep. Let's look at the next one here. It's a wide receiver debate. Man, Tim Patrick making another appearance in a fan start sit here. So we got Tim Patrick versus the Browns, John Brown versus the Buccaneers, or Dante Pettis versus the Seahawks.
I want to know how these teams are getting this far in the playoffs and having these choices to put out there because that sucks.
That's a 16-team league, maybe. That'd be an okay guy to have.
Yeah, but you know what happened is everybody with these including me, with these bomb players on their team, all had like down weeks. Well, they probably lost all their matchups.
Look at the injuries, too, that have been happening.
John Brown and Tim Patrick and Austin Pettis.
Yeah, and there's big injuries. Like Emmanuel went down. OBJ didn't play last week. Now we got Tyreek Hill. Who knows what's happening there? There's a lot of people that are like big names that, where'd they go?
I know, but god damn, this is shit. I've been keeping an eye on Pettis because that guy next year is going to be up at my top. He's going to be a guy that I might be grabbing a little bit early.
It's exactly what I was going to say.
Drafts. I'm a big fan. That guy can move. Like, he's got some bursts. I've been watching him those last couple of weeks just put people on skates. I really like a lot of I'm seeing about him. Nick Mullins is kind of getting on the same page as him.
I'm with you, man. I like him next year.
Yeah, we're talking about so many damn Ravens wide receivers here. I can't even take it at this point.
It's gross.
I mean, do I have to choose?
Flip a 3-sided coin.
I had to roll the dice here. I don't know. I guess based off of passing defense, I guess I'm gonna take Tim Patrick because I think all these quarterbacks suck in my opinion. John Brown's too inconsistent. I gotta go Tim Patrick. I don't know.
John Brown.
They all suck.
I told someone on Twitter last week prior to the game that John Brown would be too inconsistent for me. Mm-hmm. Sure enough, he scored a touchdown, but he still only scored like 9 fantasy points. That's literally what he got. He got you your touchdown. Man, I look at these options and I am in the same boat you are. My only reason I'm going someone different, I'm going to go John Brown here, is literally because of that deep ball potential. Maybe he pops one off. He might have like a 3-catch, 154-yard, 2-touchdown performance. I'm not saying that he's going to. That's about a 4% chance, but he's the most likely guy to pop off. Pettis, I could see them getting shut down by Seattle the way they played Monday night against the Vikes. And once again, Tim Patrick, give me him as a long snapper. I don't want him as a wide receiver. Dumb.
Yeah.
All right, let's do a quarterback debate here. I think I know where you're going on this one.
I don't know where I'm going.
Oh, well, we'll see if I'm right then. Lamar Jackson versus the Buccaneers or Mitchell Trubisky. Mitchell interception Trubisky versus the Packers.
Like I said, I don't know what to expect out of Trubisky in the offense after his last week performance, the Sunday night performance. It just wasn't good. Lamar Jackson, who knows if he's going to be starting? We don't know anything about that, right? Right now, John Harbaugh isn't naming a starter. Joe Flacco's probably going to be suiting up. We don't know who's going to start. But so is it even possible to answer this question? It's hard.
Yeah, it's tough. What do you think about Trubisky last week? Because he threw all those interceptions. Do you think maybe the Rams defense is getting a little bit better now that, Marcus Peters is feeling a little bit more healthy. Aqib Talib is finally back. You got the best set of their duo of defensive ends now. They got Fowler in a trade to play end. Like, that defense seems to be getting healthier at the right time. So, they still balled out. I don't know if that's all on Trubisky. I think
Trubisky is the same quarterback as Kirk Cousins as potential-wise. Like, he could have these terrible games.
Right.
He could have these good games, real good games, look great, but then he can just play like shit. He is literally probably the future Kirk Cousins. Like, I like Trubisky because he does put up those big number games just because of the scheme. But after watching him last night, there's interceptions that just shouldn't be. He's overthrowing guys.
That one he had to Burton where Burton was wide open. Yeah, that wins me my fantasy line game, by the way, if he completes that.
Drop that in a bucket, and I could have won if he didn't suck so bad, too. So
yep, that's rough.
Drop that in a bucket, and it's there, but he just shoots it over. Like, there was no touch. He threw it right over his head.
So you're going to go with Trubisky by default.
If Lamar Jackson is playing, I'm on his side.
Okay. All right, so if he's playing, with that caveat.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm with you.
Tampa Bay's defense, garbage.
Yep, I'm the exact same thing. I don't need to reiterate it. The exact same thing. If Jackson plays, I'm going.
This is the guy who's going to run it like that.
Right. Well, they both have running option, but yeah, Jackson has that elite running on his side.
Exactly. Like, they've called runs for him.
Right. Yeah, no kidding. One more before we do some DFS talk. Matt Ryan versus the Cardinals or Andrew Luck versus the Cowboys. This is a tough one.
Jesus Christ.
This is super tough, and this is like, you have an elite quarterback versus a pretty elite defense, and then you've got Arizona, who's not terrible, but Matt Ryan, who hasn't looked all that well.
Aaron Rodgers got shut down by the Cardinals defense, and maybe because he didn't care in that game, he was like, fuck it, let's get McCarthy fired, and then I'll play good. But Matt Ryan just played like shit, and I guess you got the couple of garbage side touchdowns. Arizona's defense is better than the Packers, especially secondary, especially with all their injuries right now. I'm going Luck all day, every day. Just Luck, he's matchup proof to me. Like, I know he had a huge game against Jacksonville, but a terrible game against Jacksonville last time, but he also had a really great game against Jacksonville, 8 weeks before that. So I'm going with, you don't not play Andrew Luck if you have the choice.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on this one.
He's back, guys.
I'm looking at Andrew Luck.
Isn't that exciting? I'm excited about that.
About what?
Andrew Luck is back, man.
I love it. Have you been listening to his post-game press conferences?
No, I just neckbeard.
Listen to them because it's great. He says nothing, but he says it with his just his terrible voice, and it is fantastic. I can't even put words to it. It's
talk about terrible voice. No one's worse than Patrick Mahomes, though.
Oh, I sound like a Cookie Monster.
He's a weird guy.
I want Andrew Luck to have a conversation with Patrick Mahomes. I would watch a half-hour program on that.
Oh my god!
Oh, it's fantastic.
A lot to get into here yet.
Yeah, Luck had that one terrible game against the Jags, man. But outside of that, he's been 20-plus in every week since week 3. And he's played against some decent pass defenses, too. The Bills, who are technically first in pass defense, 23 points. Against the Jags before that bad game, 22 points. Against Tennessee, who's 9th, 24 points. So, yeah, lately we've been seeing the good offenses get shut down by these defenses, which scares me a little bit. But, man, if your playoffs are on the line right now, just ask yourself simply, without thinking about it too much, do I want the ball in Andrew Luck's hand or do I want it in Matt Ryan's? And that answer to me is pretty simple. So I'm going to go with Andrew Luck as well on that one. All right, before we talk a little DFS, let's talk about Pristine Auction real quick because it is the final week for you to get signed up for our Devontae Adams signed mini helmet. It is sponsored by Pristine Auction. Make sure you check them out. Their website is pristineauction.com. But follow us on Twitter at LoadedBox. Find the tweet that we have the giveaway details. Make sure you're following. Retweet that tweet. Mention a friend. Show proof that you're subscribed on either iTunes or Google Play, and you will get entered to win. We're going to be doing that announcement likely this weekend. So with that, DJ, let's get to where we typically start this podcast. It's with some daily fantasy talk. Do you want to lead off with your quarterback?
Yeah, because I hated the quarterbacks this week. It's like you get below, see, I'm looking for a bargain. I'm trying to help you guys out. I'm looking for a bargain quarterback. You get below 7,800 and it's garbage.
Tough.
I was frustrated. So you know what I did?
What'd you do?
I went back to our well, and that's Derek Carr, 6,800 at Cincinnati.
I looked at him, man. I looked at him.
How many times have we said this? I'm pretty sure we've probably hit every time. I said Baker Mayfield, I know he dominated against Cincinnati. Play any quarterback against Cincinnati. Worst defense ever. Don't care. They're 29th, I think, against the pass, but, they still suck. Derek Carr, Raiders are riding high after that huge Steelers win, so they got a little bit of confidence going into these last couple of games, even though they should be playing for a draft pick and a pass rusher, but whatever.
What are they doing? Yeah.
And Derek Carr put up great numbers against another team who's one of the worst against the pass 2 games ago in Kansas City Chiefs. So this defense is the worst in Cincinnati. He's put up a couple of 20-point games the last 3 weeks. One of them against Kansas City, just another team that's similar to Cincinnati. So I was just making the comparison. Derek Carr here. It's a nice matchup.
I considered him this week as my bargain play.
Jared Cook's a tight end stack you should do with him, too.
That's not a bad. That's a bargain, too. That's like a total bargain stack. I considered him as a bargain play at quarterback. A couple of things funny about Oakland here. They win against a good team in Pittsburgh, and they fire their general manager the next day. That's kind of funny to me.
Yeah, that whole arrangement was a mess.
Yeah.
Gruden should be the one GM who's getting fired, not McKenzie. McKenzie did a lot of good things for Oakland, and he's going to be a good GM somewhere else. And Oakland's just going to make a lot more bad decisions. Amari Cooper looks like a top 5 wide receiver in the league right now in Dallas. Khalil Mack is the best pass rusher in the history of the earth. So, they'll suffer the consequences. Raiders are going to become the Browns, honestly.
We have to have a whole podcast on this because I could talk forever about the Raiders situation right now. The one thing I'll say, man, I went with that same theory a couple weeks ago.
I like the John Gruden reference there. One thing I'll say, man.
I ran into that one. I didn't even know. I went with that strategy going against the Bengals when I stacked Emmanuel Sanders and Case Keenum, and it bit the shit out of me. So that'd be one hesitation I'd have. But yeah, I can't complain too much. Like I said, I almost use him as my bargain quarterback, so I can't hate on that too much. My quarterback, and I always do a stack of the week. You know that if you've been listening by now. I'm going to tell you what. Another Jaws.
I'll tell you what, Jaws.
I did my prep for this right before and during the Monday night game, and after watching Monday's game, I'm a little hesitant about my stack, but I'm going to try to convince you a little bit on it here. My stack of the week is the Vikings duo of Kirk Cousins and either Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs. I prefer I prefer Thielen in this stack, but if you need the extra $500, that's the difference between Thielen and Diggs. I'm okay with going with Diggs. But man, I'm just so hesitant on this now. They looked terrible against Seattle. I know Seattle has a decent pass defense here. But the thing about the Dolphins is they're likely still without Xavier Howard. That's still a question mark. We're recording this on Tuesday, so we don't have the latest update on that. But man, Kirk Cousins and that entire Vikings offense is going to have to play better if they have any chance of sniffing the playoffs. I think they really shot themselves in the foot Monday night. But man, maybe this is a scenario where the team's offense takes a step forward, just like the Packers did. You fired your head coach and your offensive coordinator, basically, in McCarthy, and you saw the Packers offense go to that next level, play well. Hey, DeFilippo's out. No more play calling for him. Brand new guy in there. Maybe that's what they need. Maybe they needed a little bit of a change. It could be. Who knows? But maybe that's the spark that they needed, and they get a great matchup. They get a great matchup against the Dolphins. I mean, Patriots lost that game. Yeah, it shocked me. It shocked a lot of people. But their playmakers went crazy. Cordero Patterson scored a touchdown. Edelman scored a touchdown. Gronk scored a touchdown. There are going to be chances against this defense. There's not a doubt in my mind. Now they're back at home against a much lesser opponent, like defensive-wise, in Seattle.
I'm coming home.
So I'm not mad about it. Like, I was a little nervous to even present this one to the audience after the way they played on Monday night, but I'm sticking with it. Stack of the week, Cousins with Thielen. If you want to save $500, Cousins and Diggs.
I mean, the Vikings are going to fuck around and let the Packers in the playoffs the way they're playing.
Oh my God! Don't even talk like that.
What do you mean? It's like they're the only team that like hinges the Packers' choice in the playoff. Well, them and the Packers, but
right.
The three teams they need to lose one are each going to lose one, and then it comes down to the Vikings losing two of their last three, which would be really tough because it is the Dolphins, the Lions, and the Bears, which I need the Dolphins to win. But like the Vikings suck. They do, but the good thing for you is this game is at noon o'clock on Sunday, so Kirk Cousins doesn't have the whole world watching him, and he's the worst in primetime games. He's the worst.
0-5 now on Monday?
Well. Yeah, sucks on primetime games. So you're probably going to be okay. I'm just really hoping Miami can win that game, so I'm just cheering for I got a pick for the Vikings, though, against Miami, so I can't say too much.
Right. I love the fact that at this point in the season, you are now cheering for the Dolphins harder than I am. Like, I love that. I love that it comes down to that.
Yeah, I was, like, out of it now that, like, they have, like, this like, little bit of, like, they're literally season hinges on the Vikings and then themselves beating the Bears. Because if they beat the Bears, it's nothing after that. It's, like, I think it's the Lions and the Jets or something like that.
Oh, my God.
So...
yeah, let's save that for a podcast down the line here in case they keep winning.
Yeah.
One quarterback I wanted to ask you about. It's kind of like a yes or no question. Does Dak Prescott break his current 7-game streak of going every other week scoring over 20 fantasy points? Obviously, I don't feel like I have to spell that out, but just in case I do. One week he gets over 20, the next under 20. 1 week over, the next week under. He's been doing that for 7 straight weeks, and last week he had over 20. So I'm asking you, does he go over or under 20 fantasy points this week? He gets the 15th ranked pass defense in the Colts. Yep. Dak is currently averaging 18 per game. But, man, he is coming off that huge game against Philadelphia. More like a huge second half, I guess. But he had 42 completions, 455 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Probably his best day as a fantasy quarterback, minus the ones where he has good running games. Over or under 20 for Dak?
Under. He sucks.
Let that one sit, folks.
Still sucks.
That's all you're going to give me?
He's still a bad quarterback. I mean, he's not good.
Don't you think?
He's in a good situation. You got Tyron Smith out there. When you have a guy who has to wear a knee brace for an elbow brace because he's so fucking big that an elbow brace won't fit on his giant arm, you're in a pretty good situation.
Yeah, I love that. I love
Just
that.
Say it.
I think that the Colts defense can get exposed, though, and like you said, man, that freaking situation that he's in is just perfect right now. Because if the Cowboys can establish the running game with Zeke, man, that's just next level. He's hands down like a top 3 running back in the league. And they showed a stat not too long ago how much more active he's been in the passing game recently. And fantasy owners are loving that. But the thing is, you get Dak going, or you get Zeke going, all it does is open up more things for Dak. And he doesn't need to be great. I know that you don't think he's a good quarterback, but when it comes to fantasy, you don't always need to be that good. I've been trying to tell you that. You don't need to be a top 10 quarterback to put up top 10 fantasy quarterback stats, and that's what Dak can do. So I think he breaks it. I think he gets 20 plus this week. Blake Bortles is a perfect example of that.
You always said he was garbage.
Yeah, and that one year he put up what was he, quarterback 2 in fantasy?
Blake Bortles is the man. I can't wait for him to go somewhere. And he'll probably end up in Miami next year, and he'll tear it up.
Oh my God, the podcast just ended. If Blake Bortles goes to Miami,
he doesn't leave Florida. I don't know if you've realized that. He does not leave the state of Florida.
That's probably true. But
he doesn't. Where did he play college football?
UCF.
Where is he playing in the NFL?
Jacksonville.
Yeah, he hasn't ever left Florida.
Where did he go to high school?
Florida.
We'll just make that assumption. I have no idea what the answer is. But I'm telling you, if they go from signing Blake Bortles and Blake Bortles playing meaningful snaps to all of a sudden having, or Brock Osweiler, to all of a sudden having Blake Bortles, my Dolphin fandom will just have to end. I'm done with that.
Oh, God. Blake Bortles is the man. You'd be so lucky.
All right, I'm going to interrupt you. I'm done with Blake Bortles. We don't have time for this podcast and Blake Bortles. Let's talk about your running back.
Altamonte Springs, Florida, in 1992.
Are you serious?
Yeah. He went to Oviedo in Oviedo, Florida.
All right. It's official. Blake Bortles has never left the state of Florida.
Good luck. You were Tampa.
Yeah, hopefully it's Tampa. Then the Dolphins will get Jameis. You watch.
Yeah.
All right. What's your running back play?
All right, so this is where I said I'm going to talk about I'm going to have a Vikings pick here. I'm going Dalvin Cook, 6,200 as my bargain pick of the week, versus Miami. Dalvin Cook, he finally looks fully healthy. These last two games, he looks like that explosive guy we saw last year before his injury, just blowing through lines. I expect his touches. I think he has had double-digit points and I'll get to it. I expect his touches to continue to go up as long as he looks as good. Plus, he's fresh, right? He missed a bunch of games, hasn't played that much, been splitting touches with Latavius, so he's a fresh player, and he just looks like he's fresh. He's scored 14-plus points in FanDuel in the last 3 games.
Yep.
Miami is 28th against the run, and they're just a garbage team, right? They're just a piss-poor excuse for a team. I'd rather be a Browns fan than a Dolphins fan.
Oh, me too. That's not saying much.
I'd
love to be a Browns fan. What's good about them?
What's good about dolphins in general? They make stupid fucking noises in the water.
A herd of dolphins. A school of dolphins can kill a shark. So, and
that's not even true.
And they're the only other mammal or whatever that has sex for pleasure.
Sex.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what?
Boom,
they
roasted.
also let people ride them around like they're water horses. They're just the bitches.
Your wife does the same thing.
The bitches of the water. Oh, you're so funny.
Anyway.
What's good about being a dolphin? There's nothing good. You should just kill yourself.
Thanks. Do you want me to comment on Dalvin Cook? Because I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. Like you said, 3 in a row here with 14 plus. The thing about Monday night's game is he caught that stupid touchdown at the very end that kind of inflated his stats a little bit. But man, that's against a much better defense than what he's going to see in Miami. Miami doesn't have that defensive front right now that can stop the run. And if the Vikings are able to remain balanced, man, it's just going to be a long day. I'm a little nervous. I'm going to that game. I feel like I'm wasting my time again. It's just set up bad for them. But yeah, he looks healthy. He looks a little bit more fresh. I'm a huge Dalvin Cook fan. I was out of Florida State. I was me and you were pretty high on him coming out of the draft, using him as a rookie. And yeah, he was crushing it last year until he had that knee injury. And I'll say it again, along with everybody, Adrian Peterson basically ruined it for players coming back from knee injuries. Everyone's now expected to come back and be 100% healthy and run for 2,000 yards. That dude is a freak. That doesn't just happen. Look at Carson Wentz. He's struggling a little bit. Look at Andrew Luck with his shoulder. He's had to sit out an entire year. Cam Newton, we're seeing him have a weak arm now. Dalvin Cook can fall into that category. He maybe needed a little bit more time. So, yeah, man.
Cam Newton looks like Peyton Manning 2 years ago.
That's a great reference. It really is. So, yeah, man, give me Dalvin Cook. I can see him tearing up Miami a little bit this week.
I'll touch Miami.
Good. Okay, I have a little bit of a risky play here. He's the 7th most expensive running back, but I think he could provide you some pretty nice return. He's $7,400. It's David Johnson at the Falcons. Basically with this one, it's kind of a gut feeling, going with the trend of running backs just killing the Falcons more often than not this year. They're only 26th against the run. The bad thing about David Johnson, after his 2 big games in a row that he had once Leftwich started calling plays for him against the Chiefs and the Raiders, he's been pretty average. His high point total over the last 3 weeks is 10. And that's obviously not going to do it, especially at the 7th most expensive running back. But man, the Cardinals are just bad right now. They lost to a down Detroit team at home last week, and that's just making matters worse at this point. I hate that the Cardinals right now are wasting the prime of David Johnson. They're wasting the back 9 of Larry Fitzgerald. But if these coaches, especially the head coach, the dude that used to be on Jerry Springer, if he wants to save his job, he's going to have to rely on David Johnson as the guy that can get it done. So it's a risky play. This is a really gut feeling, but I think he could provide a big return at $7,400.
Who's the backup for Cardinals?
I don't even want to talk about him. I don't even want to talk about him.
What's his name? I just remember him scoring 2 touchdowns against the Packers, and you have him on your fantasy team, David Johnson, right?
Yep.
And you're like, who's this fucking guy? They weren't even putting David Johnson in at the goal line. They just kept giving him the ball. Like I said, hilarious. I was dying. Plus, I was playing against David Johnson.
So you're loving
even
it.
Funnier. Yeah, it was the best thing ever.
Nope. I'm every running back I use this week, every time I watch part of the game, the backup is in. Whether it's
What's
David
his name,
Jones.
Edwards,
yeah. Yeah, I hated it. There's one running back I feel like we need to talk about. And since you didn't bring him up, I feel like we need to talk about this guy. Which Derrick Henry are we going to get this week? Are we going to get the Henry that we thought he had the potential to be, the one that we saw last week on Thursday? Or are we going to get the Henry that we typically get 15 out of the 16 games of the year? He's still, despite last week he had that 238-yard performance, 4 touchdowns. I know everyone saw it. Everyone knows about it. The 99-yard touchdown where he kicked that cornerback out of the club with that stiff arm. He's still only $6,100. I feel like people are going to be jumping on him. But man, if he puts up his normal points that he's been putting up all week, it ain't going to end well for you. So which Derrick Henry are we going to get this week? Giants. That's who he's playing. 22nd ranked run D.
I don't blame it on Derrick Henry at all. Like I told you, I don't think he was used right, not used consistently enough. So if it keeps going the way he's being used, except for this last game, then you're going to get the bad Derrick Henry. If they feed him the ball, forget Dion Lewis fucking exists, because like I told everybody before the season, Dion Lewis isn't going to be good for the Titans because they're taking the guy they thought looked great at the Patriots and put him in another offense and not being able to do the same things with them because they aren't Bill Belichick and Tom Brady.
That was a good hit.
Use them the same way.
That was a good hit that you had, because so many people were like, remember in the offseason where it was Derrick Henry only before they got Lewis?
Yeah.
Everyone was so high on Henry. And then as soon as Lewis came in, it was like, we're all low on Henry now. And man, Dion Lewis was being considered like a top 20 running back. And you're like, tread lightly on that one, because we've seen this before. People from the Patriots go elsewhere and boom, they're not exactly what they were when they were at New England. So yeah, good call on that. I'm gonna talk about a receiver here in a minute that's going to allude to what I think about Derrick Henry this week. So we'll get to that. Let's go to your play at wide receiver first.
All right. Here's my wide receiver, and if you're on YouTube, it's my gut play of the week here. My wide receiver gut play of the week. I just showed my belly to the YouTube
Your
people.
G-boy.
I'm playing
Your
Larry
dad
Fitzgerald because you just very quickly mentioned his name. Larry Fitzgerald, 6,000, hell of a bargain.
Yeah.
At Atlanta this week. You know what it feels like, Ben?
What does what feel like?
It feels like it's time for Fitz to have a good week. Check this out. Listen to this theory. I think this is a really good theory here. It is coming down to the end of Larry Fitzgerald's career. I truly believe that.
Yeah.
It could be the start of this goodbye tour. So why not just force the ball to him? Arizona, at this point, they're just playing for draft picks. And Atlanta just isn't that good of a defense. So why not just force feed Larry the ball, let him try to go out, with a bunch of catches, some touchdowns, and say his goodbyes with a good ending. Force feed him the ball. It's his goodbye tour.
I agree with you, but Steve Wilkos, the old guy on Jerry Springer, he's coaching for his job. But the thing is about force-feeding Larry, about force-feeding DJ, that's your ticket to winning, because Christian Kirk just went on IR, so you can't really build that chemistry anymore. But yeah, why not give Josh Rosen the ability, if this is the end for Fitz, why not let him, I don't want to say build a chemistry with Fitzgerald, but learn from like a top 10 wide receiver of all time. Feed him, soak as much of that in as possible. This is a very far-fetched strategy that I'm presenting to you as to why to use him. But I'm not going to lie, he crossed my mind. And especially against that banged-up defense, it's a good bargain play. I'm not hating it.
I don't want to be the one to insult you, but I don't think Larry Fitzgerald is going to teach Josh Rosen very much about how to play quarterback.
Why?
Because he's never played it.
Haven't you seen Larry Fitzgerald can throw a ball? He was a ball boy for the
guys
Vikings.
can throw a ball.
Kenyon Drake threw a ball out of the hard. That's what.
He wants that ball back now too.
Yeah, he does. Should have never tossed it. I'm pretty sure that thing landed in like Jacksonville. I think it still might be going.
That thing landed. He landed in Jacksonville. Blake Bortles probably has it, and he'll bring it back to him next year, so we're all good.
Blake Bortles couldn't even throw it back. He just roll it.
I was listening to, I'm going to just shout him out, whatever, I don't care. Pardon My Take today, and they are really good friends with Blake Bortles, and they were talking about the Patrick Mahomes no-look pass, and they're like, no big deal, Blake. I'm sure you've done that before. Blake is like one of the coolest guys you'll ever listen to.
I've heard that, yeah.
And he just responds with, he's like, yeah, I did that, and it probably hit a guy's helmet and ended up in the other team's arms. Like, he's making fun of himself. He's like, yeah, I threw it to the wrong team, but same concept.
Yeah, same concept. I was going to say, Blake Bortles probably makes every throw no look.
He doesn't care. He's hilarious. He talked about how he tricked the Jaguars into extending them before the year. It's great. I loved it.
Oh, that's great. I have to listen to that. That's pretty good.
He's hilarious.
So did you say Fitz was 6,000?
6,000.
All right, so if you want to save $200 huge dollars, my bargain play, and I kind of alluded to it when talking about Derrick Henry, my bargain play is Corey Davis, $5,800 at the Giants. Here's my question. Do we really think Tennessee's run game blows up again and Corey Davis only gets 3 targets? That answer isn't as obvious as you think it would be, because for how bad that sounds, it's a possibility considering that Titans offense this year. But I just don't see that run game popping off the way it did. And if the Giants are looked at anything, obviously stopping that run game is going to be the number one priority. And before that game where the Titans literally didn't even need to pass, when it was just Henry, Corey Davis had 21 and 13 with a touchdown in both of the games leading up to that one. With Davis, I mean, the talent is there. We all know that. The matchup is there. It's literally going to come down to which Titans offense do we see. So for $5,800, if you need a bargain play, that's who I'm going to roll with.
I don't know why I was thinking about this, and I didn't even listen to the end of what you said because I was looking at myself on the YouTube. Have you ever watched Mitchell Renz do his live videos?
Sometimes, not as often as you, though.
His beginning is like the biggest, douchiest thing you'll ever see. He's like, "What's up, guys?" with his stupid little giggle, and I just want to punch him in the face every time. He's like, "What's going on, guys?" That's what he says. "What's going on, guys?" And I'm like, Jesus Christ, guy, you gotta figure it out.
We need to have Mitchell on again so we can just. I want to have Mitchell on and not even talk about football. I just want to talk about his personal life. Just see how things are going.
Yeah, he's messing with girls from our hometown.
Yeah, man. Mitchell is like the modern day Magic Johnson at this point. I mean, he's just dishing out assists, doing things in the bedroom. I don't know what else. I don't want to spill all of his personal belongings.
He spills it all on. You don't even see it. He just gives everything away. You gotta pay attention.
All the girls know he's just giving it away.
Yeah, he talks about his body count all the time.
Jesus. Are you ready for my favorite game that we play on this podcast?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, who am I? Who am I? Wide receiver edition. If you're new to the podcast, just follow along, listen to my clues, try to guess which wide receiver I am describing. DJ, clue number 1. I put up 24 fantasy points last week despite not scoring a touchdown. That's impressive. Clue number 2. I haven't scored a touchdown in 3 weeks, but I've reached double-digit fantasy points in all 3 games thanks to playing...
PPR?
Half.
Okay.
Half. I've reached double-digit fantasy points in all 3 of those games I didn't score a touchdown in, thanks to playing with one of the best quarterbacks in the game. Clue 3. 4 weeks ago, I played the Tennessee Titans, who are the 9th best pass defense. I put up 32 fantasy points in a 9-catch, 155-yard, 2-touchdown performance. I always give you a guess after clue 3 before I give you clue 4. Do you have a guess?
Was the Titans?
That's
they
who
played against?
That's who we played against, yep.
2 weeks ago?
I really think we need to find like a music that like can just fill in while you think here, because you try to process all 3 of the clues and it's like, it could be. But more often than not, you guess the receiver. It's just not always the first guess.
I know, it's a tough one.
It's funny though when you do guess it right. You'll be like Tyreek Hill, nope, and then you'd be like Julio Jones, and you just know it like the second guess for some reason every time. That wasn't.
Well, I guess it's not either one of those.
No, it's not either of those.
God Tennessee Titans. Somebody who's got to catch the ball a lot if they're not scoring touchdowns. Got a good quarterback. God, my mind's going crazy right now.
My mind's going a mile an hour.
My mind's going a mile an hour.
Is
it T.Y. Hilton? I don't know.
It's T.Y. Hilton. Congratulations.
Oh
That was really good. So here's my fourth clue, and it's going to allude to what you can respond to. Fourth clue, this week I get the eighth best pass defense, and Ben considers me unplayable in DFS despite the $7,900 price tag. What do you think about that?
Who do they play?
Dallas.
Cowboys? Oh, yeah, we already talked about that. It all comes down to this. I don't 100% agree with this because where the Cowboys are buttering, their bread's buttered is they're getting pressure. Their front seven has been just ridiculous.
Yep.
And the Colts' strength right now, which Luck hasn't had, is they're protecting him better than he's ever seen.
Oh, yeah, easily.
Ever. So if he keeps getting protection like that, that's a great matchup. If he can do that and gets time, those wide receivers can beat that secondary.
Especially
I don't
Hilton.
think he's unplayable.
My reason for saying that he's unplayable is just because with DFS, obviously you get to the course of everybody. You can just pick whoever the hell you want. So I'm just like, man, you have T.Y. Hilton, who makes a history out of having a boom week and then just toning down quite a bit. And when you can play anybody, and if you have T.Y. Hilton against a really good team, even though I just said that the Colts are sort of like that matchup-proof type of team, I'm not hating the play. But I just think with so many other options out there at that price tag, I think you can find better this week. And it's crazy, though. Look at those numbers. He put up those huge numbers without the touchdowns. That's hard to do. Like, we don't see that very often.
I'm so proud of myself for getting that, bouncing back after
that was good.
A couple of weeks where I didn't get it right away and getting it.
I want to play this game sometime. Like, I want you to make me guess sometime. Maybe that can be like a Week 17 sketch.
I kind of suck at that. I don't know. I like answering it better. Let's just keep it the way it is.
All right. I'm tired of ending this segment on talking about tight ends. So I'm going to talk about my tight end, and then we'll get into your flex play. How about that?
I don't really like your tight end that much.
Me either. That's why I want to get it out of the way.
It's like a loose end.
It really is. It really is. I sent you that text earlier today.
After what your wife has done to it.
Hey, what does that mean?
You're loose end.
Anyway, tight ends, loose ends, however you want to judge them. This is a terrible main slate of tight ends this week. You've got Zach Ertz playing on Sunday night. Every week, but even more so this week, it seems like.
Nope, every week.
All right, well, DJ I can't argue that too much. Ertz is a Sunday night play. Kelsey is a Thursday night play. Gronk is playing on the main slate, but he's back up to $6,900 after we took complete advantage of that last week.
Of course he's back up to $6,900.
Why wouldn't he be? I mean, there was some theory in that. But man, he was $6,200 last week, and we're like, against the Dolphins, sign me up in every single DFS lineup, and I'm surprised he's not more after that game. But like you said, maybe he lost some points because of his leg falling off trying to dive for Drake. Yep. So I'm taking a stab this week. I'm taking a stab at a bargain play. It's Vance McDonald. He's a whole $5,500 versus the Pats. Man, he's TD dependent, just like every other tight end basically this year. He's reached double digits in only one game where he hasn't recorded a touchdown. So he's recorded a touchdown in 3 games. He has 3 total touchdowns on the year. So that means he's got 4 double-digit point totals the entire single game or entire year. That's how the math works on that one. Man, but I've seen a couple of holes in that Patriots defense watching that Dolphins game last week. And covering a tight end, I don't know if this won because the Dolphins didn't utilize the tight end whatsoever. But McDonald hasn't scored in 3 games. I just kind of feel like he's due. Take a chance, $5,500. You can just say next if you want to talk about your flex.
He wasn't even the best tight end on their team last week.
Vance McDonald?
Jalen Samuels.
Ah, shoot. Yeah, but on DFS, I don't get that luxury.
I got him. It was great. I still lost, though. But he put up 15 points.
Yeah, he did fine, right? Like the most points you can get out of a tight end this year.
That was awesome.
Let's wrap this puppy up with your flex.
All right, so I am going. you want to save $300 more from Ben's $200 earlier with whoever he said. I'm going Jordan Howard versus Green Bay. We talked about him a little bit,
yeah,
right?
We
talked about him at the beginning with the start-sit questions or whatever. I think the Bears are just, I've said this, I kind of am repeating what I said. I think the Bears are trying not to let Trubisky lose the game at this point. I just feel like after that performance, they're not going to let him do too much. Obviously, we got to throw that ball downfield a little bit. They're not going to go John Fox or whoever it was, just hand it off 45 times to Howard every game. Nagy's going to open it up. That's just what he's going to do. But Howard and Tariq are going to get their opportunities. Packers have been weak up front. Suffered a bunch of injuries. I said all this. After a good game against the Rams, I expect them to feed that horse again. Feed a fed horse.
Feed a fed horse. Is that one of those PETA things?
Mm-hmm. Feed a dead horse. Feed a fed horse. I don't think you're going to tie it back to that.
It took me
Instead of saying feed a dead horse, say feed a fed horse.
That was great. That was full circle. If you missed last week's podcast, DJ and I talked about that PETA tweet for a little while about just how stupid they are, and they feel like they can read the minds of animals. And I don't know, man. I just don't know. Yeah, I already talked about Jordan Howard. I don't want to do it again.
Yeah, might as well just grab a rose by the thorns.
He's just gonna go through all of them now.
I'm on fire.
All right, before we wrap this puppy up, make sure that you are following on Twitter at Loaded Box. Get signed up for that Devontae Adams mini helmet. I'm looking at it now. It is dope as shit. You're going to want to get your hands on that. Thanks again for listening. Tune in again later this week. We're going to go game by game, picking our straight-up winners, our against-the-spread winners. So stay tuned for that one. Check out our website, loadedboxpodcast.com. All of our blogs, all of our podcasts, giveaway information is on there as well in case you, for some reason, don't know how to work Twitter. We're available on iTunes. We're available on Google Play. Search Loaded Box, subscribe, rate, and review. And with that, DJ, end of this.
Cheers. Bye.